Warning: this podcast contains discussions about sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including violence, domestic abuse, and other forms of trauma. Listener discretion is advised. Some content may not be suitable for all audiences, especially young listeners. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-723.
Brought to you by Magnolia Street Podcast. Welcome to Charmed and Dangerous True Crime, where witchcraft and murder collide. It's where we uncover the dark esoteric secrets that lie just beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary and what some may call practical lives. Today's story is a tale of two sisters bound by blood, love, and something far more dangerous, black magic, bound by a century-old ancestral curse. This is the story of Jillian and Sally Owens, and the deadly secrets they tried so desperately to hide from their community and the law. In the sleepy coastal town of Montville's Island, Massachusetts, whispers of the Owens family have drifted through the generations like the salty sea breeze of its seafaring past. For over 3 centuries, the Owens women have lived under the shadow of suspicion, their name linked to tragedy, heartbreak, and some say witchcraft. It all began with her ancestor, Magnolia Owens, a woman accused of practicing the dark arts who'd narrowly escaped her execution. Heartbroken by the betrayal of her lover, Magnolia is said to have cast a spell, not to harm others, but to shield her hurt from ever loving again. Yet as the years passed, the spell grew into something far more sinister, a generational curse that doomed any man who dared to love an Owens woman. For centuries, the Owens family lived under this curse, watching as the men they loved perished. Local legend says they hear the ticking of the death watch beetle, shortly before fate rears its ugly head, time and time again. Frances and Jed Owens had taken in a young Sally and Jillian after their own father had met his mysterious and untimely death. Their mother had succumbed to suicide, a result of a broken heart, brought on by this unbearable curse. As newly homed orphans, Sally and Jillian would watch their aunts Frances and Jet work as witches for hire, crafting love spells for the lovelorn women of the neighborhood. They would stick pins and needles into doves and recite incantations from mystical texts. Sally, wary of suffering the same fate as her late mother, had always tried to distance herself from the family's dark legacy. She vowed to never fall in love. Jillian, on the other hand, would run into the eye of the storm. As young adults, Jillian would go on to leave Montville's Island, looking for love in all the wrong places. Sally chose to stay behind and cling to the comforts of home and familiarity on the island. However, the sisters would not part ways without performing a blood pact that would bond the two through space and time and ensure their fates would align when the time came. Sally and Jillian would keep in touch, sending life updates through a series of letters and sentiments. Jillian was out in the world meeting people and experiencing a life that did not exist for her on the island. The aunts had noticed Sally's longing for something more. They had worked a spell on an unsuspecting man at the local farmer's market to fall in love with Sally. Not long after, she had married Michael, a kind man oblivious of the aunt's magical workings that kept him bound to Sally. Together they had built a life far removed from the whispers of witchcraft and curses, but even Sally could not escape the curse's reach. Michael's sudden death in a tragic hit-and-run accident left Sally a grieving widow, struggling to raise their 2 daughters, Kylie and Antonia. She had begged her aunts to bring Michael back, with their powers of necromancy and dark magic, but they would do no such thing. They vowed that he would come back as something dark and unnatural. Unbeknownst to Sally, her sister Jillian was dealing with her own dark forces. She became involved with a charming but dangerous man who kept Jillian at arm's length, Jimmy Angelov. Jillian would have to resort to magical measures to gain some respite, drugging Jimmy with belladonna, a nightshade with sedative properties that would knock him into a soundful slumber. Jillian would use the time that she had to astral project in the night, so she could be there for Sally during her time of grief. Jillian gushed about the details of her new love life, which worried Sally. But Jillian quickly changed the subject, reminding Sally that despite her grief, she needed to take care of herself and her little girls. Jillian was gone quicker than she had arrived, and Sally began the next day, as if she was starting life anew. She pursued her passions and opened up her botanical shop. Life was on the up and up, until it wasn't. It was the spring of 1998. The elders were off to celebrate the summer solstice. Sally Owens would receive a phone call that evening that would change her life.
Scared. Can you come and get me?
Her sister Jillian was in trouble.
Where are you?
It was a stormy night when Sally beckoned to her sister's call of distress. She arrived at a seedy motel to provide her sister refuge. But what she had found there would turn their lives upside down. Jillian was beaten and bruised at the hands of her lover. Her story was chilling.
Jelly donuts, whipped cream.
Since her last visit with Sally, she had fallen deeper into the toxic love affair with Jimmy Angelov, a charismatic drifter whose dark charm had drawn her in. But Jimmy was not what he seemed. Beneath his magnetic exterior lurked a violent, controlling predator. Desperate to escape his grip, Jillian confessed that she had been drugging him with belladonna to get some sleep. Sally was horrified. She couldn't understand why her sister would resort to such measures. But Jillian reminded her of the harsh reality. They were Owen's women, and their lives were anything but ordinary. Despite her grief, Sally knew she had to be strong for her sister. She would liberate Jillian from Jimmy's abusive clutches. In the dark of the night, hoping to get her sister to safety before the morning came. The night took a sinister turn when Jillian noticed the blood moon, a sign of trouble not far behind, and trouble did find them that night.
You will drive.
Jimmy had kidnapped the sisters, forcing Sally to drive his car, while he held Jillian hostage in the back seat. As Sally tried to focus on the road, Jimmy would attempt to brand Jillian like a cattle with a silver skull ring he brandished like a weapon, garnishing a snake's motif, ready to sink its teeth into Jillian's porcelain flesh.
By the brand, just you.
In efforts to break Jillian free from Jimmy's evil clutches, Sally began driving erratically until Jimmy let up on his violent grip on Jillian.
Give me the bottle before I plow you into a...
Okay, just calm down.
Shut up!
Calm down.
Jillian used the opportunity to use her gifts of telepathy to urge Sally to make use of the deadly nightshade in her bag. This would be sure to send Jimmy back into a slumber so they could make their escape. Little did they know, the Owen sisters would find themselves caught in a conspiracy of witchcraft, lies, and murder. The night took a grimmer turn. Jimmy did fall into a slumber he would never awaken from. Fearing for their lives as a result on what would become the unintentional murder of a man.
How much did you give him, Sally? I don't know, Jillian. I wasn't using a measuring cup. He was trying to kill you.
They fled back to Moreau's Island with Jimmy's body to try to bring him back by means of necromancy, the dark magic that the aunts so strongly discouraged. With Frances and Jet being away for the solstice celebration, the sisters were left to their own devices to try to fix this mess they had made. Consulting the aunt's grimoire, they invoked the goddess, Mighty Hecate, with Jimmy's body resting upon the kitchen slab. What transpired next was a horror they never expected. Jimmy did rise from the dead, but just as the aunts had promised, he indeed was dark and unnatural, trying to strangle Jillian once again. Sally, in her panic to save her sister from Jimmy's evil clutches once again, retrieved a cast iron skillet from the kitchen stove, banging Jimmy over the head until his body went limp, ensuring that he could never hurt her sister again. The girls' plan to resurrect Jimmy had failed for a second time. They only had one option. They had to hide the body. The storm had made its way to Magnolia Street. The rain cascaded down on them as they buried Jimmy underneath a rose arbor in the garden. They stomped the muddy grass with their bare feet to ensure he was packed far enough down into the earth to never rise and bring their dark secret back to the surface. But in the aftermath, even as life seemed to settle, the specter of Jimmy Angelov loomed large. Jillian's escape from him was temporary, and the dark secret of what the sisters had done was looming overhead. The Owen sisters would soon find themselves entangled in a deadly dance with a man whose shadow stretched far beyond the boundaries of Moreau's Island. As Sally and Jillian tried to bury their past, the spirit of Jimmy refused to rest. His presence lingered, The roses that he was buried under seemingly bloomed out of season. The garden was soon a hotbed of toads, breathing through the grass. Jimmy's steel-toe boots peeked through the surface of the grass after a fresh rain. Kylie had seen Jimmy's specter under the roses when no one else could. Jillian would have nightmares fueled by the guilt of their sinister deeds. And the bottle of tequila laced with a nightshade that claimed Jimmy's life the first time had mysteriously shown back up on the porch. His spirit was like a dark cloud that threatened to unravel their fragile false sense of peace they had worked so hard to maintain. Rumors swirled through town of Jillian's return. And the aunt's intuition led them to believe that something had gone awry. They left the sisters to clean up their own mess. Enter Officer Gary Hallett, a state prosecutor from Tucson, Arizona, who had been tracking a string of disappearances linked to one man, Jimmy Angelov. Jimmy Angelov wasn't just any man. To the world, he was charming and irresistible. But to those who knew the truth, he was a predator. A man linked to the disappearances of several young women, including the vibrant Phoebe Stone. Phoebe's family described her as a beacon of light, her smile capable of brightening the darkest room. But her light was snuffed out, her fate stolen by the man she trusted. Gary's pursuit was driven by the hope of bringing justice to Stone and the other victims. When his investigation led him to Murray's Island, Gary found himself drawn into the Owens world. A world shrouded in mystery. He found himself intrigued, wanting to explore the root of all the town gossip. The moment Gary met Sally, he felt an inexplicable pull, as if fate itself had drawn him to her. But the deeper he delved into the Owens story, the more he realized that the truth was far more complex than he could have possibly imagined. When Gary first stepped foot in the Owens garden, what he saw was of the utmost suspicion. Sally was chopping down an entire rose bush which had seemingly bloomed out of season. He was met with cautious suspicion, but he wasn't there to accuse, at least not yet. He was there to warn them, to share the story of Phoebe Stone, a young woman whose life was cut tragically short.
This is Officer Gary Hallett, State Prosecutor in Tucson, Arizona. April 8, 1995. This is the testimony of Denise Hoffman, Community Art Gallery owner in Green Valley, Pima County. Can you tell us a little bit about what you know about Phoebe Stone?
Phoebe Stone was more than just a name. She was the heartbeat of our community. She was supposed to have her art gallery opening here the weekend of her disappearance. All of her pieces were set up in my gallery. She was going to make her debut to the public here in Green Valley. But the day of her opening, she never showed up.
At just 25 years old, she was an aspiring artist and an art teacher, known for her radiant spirit and infectious laughter. Described by friends as compassionate and charismatic, Phoebe had a gift for making everyone feel valued. But as we know, sometimes the brightest lights attract the darkest shadows. It all started with a whirlwind romance. Phoebe met Jimmy Angelov, a man whose charm seemed to captivate everyone he encountered. With his good looks and magnetic personality, he quickly swept Phoebe off her feet. But those closest to her noticed an unsettling undercurrent in their relationship. Friends reported subtle signs of manipulation. Jimmy was possessive and controlling, a front that hid a more sinister nature.
Hey Stevie, I'm Alice. We're filming a documentary about the disappearance of Phoebe Stone. Would you be able to answer a few questions for us on camera? I know this isn't easy.
Of course. Phoebe, she was the kind of friend you don't meet twice. She had this spark, you know. It sounds like a cliche, but she really did light up a room. I can't tell you how many people she touched. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world. Kind of a gift of hers.
I've heard people say that Phoebe had this magnetic personality, a gift for bringing people together.
Absolutely. And she was just so kind. I think that's what makes everything so hard to understand. It's like how does someone like Phoebe end up in something so dark?
Let's talk about Jimmy Angelov. What was your impression of him?
I only met Jimmy a handful of times, but he was magnetic too, in a different way. When they first got together, I thought, oh, Phoebe's met someone who can finally keep up with her. But there was something there, something unsettling. I can't explain it, but he was intense, like in a way that felt off. I'd watch him watch her sometimes, and it didn't feel safe, I guess.
Did Phoebe ever talk about feeling unsafe around him?
She didn't want to make a big deal of it. But yeah, she hinted at things. She'd joke about it, you know, like, oh, Jimmy's just a little too much sometimes, but it's all passion. I remember asking her if she was okay, but she'd laugh it off. She was so in love, or maybe just determined to see it through. I don't know.
And then she disappeared. What do you remember about those first days after she went missing?
It was surreal. She was always around, so her just not being there, it didn't feel real. Everyone thought maybe she needed a break. Maybe she'd gone off on some little adventure. That's so Phoebe, you know. But deep down, I think we all knew something wasn't right. I kept telling myself she'd come back, but there was this weight. It's like you feel it in your gut before your mind will admit it.
Her disappearance shocked everyone, and then when they found out about Jimmy's past...
Yeah, that part hit hard. It's like this person who we all knew, or we thought we knew, turns out he was just playing a part. And the reality of who he was, it just didn't fit with what Phoebe deserved. She trusted people, you know? I think maybe too much.
You sound like you've really wrestled with this a lot.
I think we all have. The what ifs. What if she'd never met him? What if we'd seen the signs sooner? What if she'd let someone in more? It's hard not to blame yourself sometimes, but we just loved her so much. And it's hard to accept that someone with so much life could be stolen away like that.
Thank you, Stevie. It's clear she was loved, and her story continues to resonate because of people like you. We're grateful you're sharing her story with us.
Thank you. I think she'd want people to remember her the way she was, full of life and laughter. That's who she really was. And maybe telling her story will stop someone else from falling into that same trap. Maybe it'll help.
On the day of her disappearance, Phoebe was last seen leaving a local cafe, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she shared her plans for a new exhibition. She had dreams of showcasing her work and inspiring others, but what she didn't know was that her life was about to take a deadly turn. The day turned into night, and when Phoebe didn't return home, her friends grew increasingly worried. As hours stretched into days, the community rallied together to search for their beloved artist. Flyers, bearing her smiling face, decorated the streets, each one a plea for information and a reminder of the vibrant life that was now missing. The dark truth began to emerge. Jimmy Angelov was not just a charming boyfriend. He was a predator, a serial killer with a growing list of victims. It soon became apparent that Phoebe was not the first woman to vanish in his wake. Authorities began piecing together the puzzle, revealing Jimmy's troubling past and his unsettling patterns. Each victim shared a common thread, a vulnerability that he exploited to lure them in. The idyllic suburb nestled in the city of Tucson was rocked by the realization that they were harboring a monster among them. The search for Phoebe took a dark turn when investigators discovered a series of chilling connections between her disappearance and Jimmy. As police delved deeper into the investigation, they uncovered the horrifying truth. Phoebe had become yet another victim of Jimmy's insatiable appetite for control and violence. Eyewitnesses reported seeing them together just hours before she vanished. Friends recounted Phoebe's growing unease about their relationship, painting a portrait of a woman trapped in a web of manipulation and fear. The community, once filled with hope, was now engulfed in grief. struggling to comprehend how such a tragedy could occur in their peaceful town. The body of Phoebe Stone was eventually discovered. She had been strangled, beaten, and branded. The silhouette of a skull burned into her flesh. It was a chilling reminder of the danger that can lurk behind a charming smile. Her death served as a painful reminder that the perfect victim can often be hidden in plain sight. Someone whose light shines so brightly, yet whose life can be extinguished in an instant. As we reflect on the tragic story of Phoebe Stone, let us remember the vibrant life she lived and the lessons her story teaches us about vigilance and compassion. The legacy of Phoebe reminds us that even in a small town filled with charm and beauty, darkness can linger just beneath the surface. In the aftermath of Phoebe's murder, Officer Gary Howlett grew hot on the trail of Phoebe's murderer with the new information he gained from a mysterious letter. It was from Sally Owens, addressed to her sister Jillian. Following Sally's return address, it led him to Magnolia Street on Marius Island. It was addressed from Sally Owens to her sister Jillian.
There is no man, Jillian. Only that man.
The details of Phoebe's death were chilling. The ring that Jimmy branded was a skull, with a snake coating through its eye socket and out of its gaping mouth. This was no ordinary mark. It was the same mark the Owen sisters recognized. It was the imprint from Jimmy Angelov's ring. Jimmy had tried to brand Jillian with its same mark, a sinister symbol of his control. It was a horrifying realization that tied Jimmy, not just to Jillian's suffering, but to the death of Phoebe Stone.
This young lady's name was Phoebe Stone. 2 years ago, she was found strangled, lying on the side of a highway. Her body had been marked with a kind of brand, burned right into the face.
This revelation sent chills through the Owen sisters. They knew now that they weren't just dealing with an abusive man. They were facing the harsh reality that they just had a brush with death, with a serial killer, a cold-blooded man who left a trail of pain and death in his wake. For Gary, this case was personal. Phoebe Stone's family had been shattered by her loss, their bright star extinguished too soon. He had promised them justice, and every lead brought him closer to the Owen sisters.
Any help you ladies can give me on locating this ex-friend of yours would sure be appreciated.
Gary couldn't help but notice a mysterious car that resided on the Owens property. A 1971 Oldsmobile 442 with Arizona plates. Jillian insisted the car was hers, plate number 229 MLB. Gary had identified it as the car of James Angelov, the prime suspect in the Tucson murders. The Owen sisters felt their lives crashing down around them. Before leaving the property and confiscating the car, Gary collected evidence. Small mysterious pellets sprinkled around the driver's seat of Jimmy's identified car. Little did Officer Gary know, it was the belladonna, the nightshade that had sent Jimmy off into the spirit world. The Owen sisters were caught in a web of their own making. Their connection to Jimmy wasn't just personal, it was dangerous. And now with Gary closing in, they had to make a choice, reveal their darkest secrets, or risk everything to protect themselves. As the storm clouds gathered over Marius Island, the Owen sisters knew that their battle with Jimmy was far from over. Gary's instincts told him that the Owen sisters were hiding something. The tragic death surrounding their family, Jimmy's car on their property, the bruises on Jillian's face, couldn't all be coincidences. He questioned multiple townsfolk before inviting himself to Sally's house for breakfast and further questioning. He confronted Sally, demanding answers, but Sally, burdened by the weight of her family's curse, could only offer him cryptic warnings. Jillian, on the other hand, was devising yet another brew of sorts to send Gary away and get him off their trail. Or perhaps she was attempting something far more grim with her potion. Would another poisoning be added to her track record? Lucky for Gary, a strange omen would step in and possibly save his life. A garden toad would burp up a mysterious ring. Upon further investigation, it matched the ring that Jimmy would brand his victims with. Gary warned the girls to get a lawyer and don't even think about leaving town. Upon Gary's exit, the Owen sisters felt the weight of their macabre secret closing in. Jillian insisted they stick to their story. As long as there was no body, there was no crime. Sally felt differently. She felt compelled to tell him everything, trying desperately to climb out of the web of conspiracy that her sister had created. She fled to Gary's quaint little B&B in the center of town with every intention of confessing. She wanted to confess it all. Gary would attempt to take her testimony.
This is the testimony of Sally Owens, March 8th, 1998. That makes no fucking sense. It wasn't the summer solstice, like yesterday.
While insisting that Jimmy had gotten what he deserved, Sally danced around an actual confession.
You think he's dead?
No, I think he's haunting us.
Despite his growing suspicions, Gary couldn't help but be drawn to Sally. Gary promised that he would do whatever he could to protect her. There was a connection between them, something that defied logic. But Sally knew better. She warned Gary that the curse would claim him too if they pursued their attraction. Gary, ever the skeptic, brushed off her fears, insisting that curses only held power if one believed in them. Meanwhile, the Owens sisters faced their darkest challenge yet. Jimmy's spirit, restless and vengeful, found a way back to the world of the living. He possessed Jillian, using her as a vessel to exact his revenge. Sally, realizing the danger, knew she had to embrace her family's magic to save her sister. Their beloved aunts, Frances and Jet, arrived in the nick of time.
I see our instincts are getting a little rusty.
To eradicate the evil spirit that squatted inside Jillian like a toad. Sally called upon the townswomen for help, the women who once ostracized Sally and her family for witchcraft, put their fears aside to help their fellow sister.
I've been strung out by a guy before, but this is...
They formed a powerful coven, tapping into a power that had long been dormant. Under the moonless sky, they cast a spell to banish Jimmy's spirit once and for all. The exorcism was successful, but the price was high. The Owens woman had to confront the darkest parts of themselves, their fears, and their past. They emerged stronger, but the scars of their trauma of murder and this haunting would never fade. Aunt Frances had cooked up a caustic lime and lye solution to dissolve Jimmy's body and bones below the earth and send his earthbound soul free to the depths of hell where he belonged. Despite the celebration, the townsmen had no knowledge of the gruesome acts the aunts had asked of them. They had become unwitting participants, unknowingly helping the Owens family cover up a murder. It was a small price to pay in exchange for never talking shit about the Owens family ever again. In the aftermath, Gary cleared the sisters of any suspicion in Jimmy's case. He returned to Tucson, leaving Sally with a glimmer of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, their love could defy the curse. Gary, the ultimate simp, for Sally, destroyed all remaining evidence that would criminalize them for the murder and disappearance for Jimmy Angelov, a violent and vile man, a serial killer. The Owens had been absolved of their crimes. Sally found love. Jillian found peace at home with her family. The sisters no longer felt like they needed to run away from who they were, the witches of Mauritius Island. As they celebrated their escape from the clutches of the law, on Hallows Eve, they floated off the rooftop of their mansion on Magnolia Street, rejoicing in the spiritual release of Jimmy and the newly lifted Owens curse. To this day, the Owens family's tale remains shrouded in mystery. Were they victims of a cruel fate? Or were they the architects of their own doom? The truth lies buried in the rose garden of Mauritius Island, waiting for those brave enough to uncover it. Perhaps you can help solve a mystery. If you have any information about the Owens family or the strange events surrounding Mauritius Island, please contact Charmed and Dangerous at magnoliastreetpodcast@gmail.com. Until then, the legacy of the Owens woman continues to cast its long, dark shadow, a haunting reminder that some secrets are never truly buried. I am your host, Billy Zane, and this has been Charmed and Dangerous. All right, get me the hell out of here. Where's that damn portal?
Hey witches, Justina here. On behalf of my co-host Christina at Magnolia Street Podcast, we'd like to thank you so much for tuning in to this very special bonus episode where we turned the plot of Practical Magic into a true crime episode. We know it was a bit late, but we hope it was worth the wait. This episode was inspired by our good friend and patron over on our Patreon, Lori Reedy. While we were on our break this past summer, Lori indulged in true crime podcasts, and it was making her husband cringe so much that he actually asked when we were coming back from our break so that she can stop listening to such gruesome content. Well, this one's for you, Lori. We wanted to play a little prank on Jimmy, so we hope you and all of our listeners enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this genre of episode, let us know if you'd like to see us do more of these movie plots in the true crime podcast genre. It was so much fun for us to put together, and we'd love to do another one. So if you have any suggestions for what movies you'd like to see us spoof on true crime genre next, be sure to send us an email at magnoliastreetpodcast@gmail.com or slide into our DMs over on our Instagram at Magnolia Street Podcast, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So this episode was written by myself, Justina Karubia, and Christina Babich with the help of JatPT, and the Unsolved Mysteries Robert Stack voice is courtesy of Storyteller.ai and 101soundboards.com. Not sponsored, but these are just some really great resources for anyone who is a content creator and is looking for a way to add some really high quality sounds to your content. Also, big thanks to 101soundboards.com for the voices of Officer Gary Hallett, gallery owner Denise Hoffman, and Alice, our documentary filmmaker. Also, special thanks to our good friend Krista Rimmer for providing the voice of Phoebe Stone's friend Stevie, and all royalty-free sound effects and true crime themed music is courtesy of Pixabay.com. This episode was produced and edited by yours truly, Justina Karubia. In all seriousness, if you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. That's 800-799-7233. Or text BEGIN to 88788. Thank you so much for tuning in to this very special bonus episode of Magnolia Street Podcast, True Crime. And be sure to tune in next week as we kick off our Season 3 premiere, and we'll be chatting all about ancestor veneration. So that is all for now. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, we'll see you next time.
I think it's hilarious that y'all are going to do a true crime episode featuring practical magic. That is going to be the thing to listen to. It's going to be great. I couldn't really surprise Jimmy with it. He won't listen to any podcast. I don't know what, I think he listens to some, but he won't sit down and listen to them with me. I won't sit down and listen to him. I have to either be driving or sewing or something where I can listen. But I played him the little clip and talked about the true crime thing and getting Jimmy to watch it, and he thought that was he thought that was so great. He may not listen to it, but he's happy that y'all included him. He's like, oh, I'm on a podcast. He said, you know how after we do powwows, you search the internet to see how many pictures we're taking of you? Well, now I'm on podcast. He thinks it's great. All right, girls, we'll talk to y'all later. Y'all have a good evening.